Good day, brothers and sisters. This is Steve Sandoval, and welcome to Pathways of Hope. In today's gospel, we reflect on Luke 10, verse 25 to 37. And this is the famous parable of the Good Samaritan. So, Jesus is answering a question of a lawyer who asked him, what is it that we need to inherit eternal life? And Jesus, realizing that this is a teaching moment, answers very clearly: You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind and soul, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. To further the test that this lawyer wanted to put Jesus in, he asked the question, who is my neighbor? And Jesus tells them a parable. Now, we see here that in the parable, a man is robbed and left half dead on the road to Jericho from Jerusalem. And Jesus chooses a man who is a Jew as the character, half dead on the road. And two Jewish uh, Levites, or these are helpers in the altar who make sure everything is in order, and a priest who represents the Jewish people whenever sacrifices are made, as the first two characters who walk down the road and sees this man. Obviously, when we hear the story, the first thing we think about is that most likely these two religious people would help the man. They are certainly neighbors. And yet, we see them pass the man by. And that's understandable, knowing who these people are. They felt like they want to be ready to worship God. And if they were going to help this man, they will become unclean. What a paradox, no? What an irony also. People who want to love God, because they love God, they don't want to be unclean. And therefore, they violate the very action that puts them into loving God, which is to love their neighbor. Now, of all characters, a Samaritan is introduced into this story. And you know what Samaritans are to the people of Jesus in that time? They were Jews who put up their own temple. Aside from Jerusalem, they intermarried with foreigners. They allowed inculturation of pagan practices. So the Jews were so uh, separated from them. They didn't want to have anything to do with Samaritans. Now, obviously, we would think that these were the last people who would help a Jew. And yet, in the story of Jesus, it is shown that it is the Samaritan who helps the man, bathes his wound, and even pays the innkeeper to take care of this wounded man. Imagine the person whom they look at as their enemy, the person whom they look at as most farthest from a neighbor, helps the Jewish man. This is quite a lesson to be learned. Reflecting on this, I realized that the Lord wants us to see our neighbor as anyone who needs help at the present moment. And there is no condition on boundaries that define who our neighbors will be. What I realize is that we need to set aside any conditions for us to help our neighbor. The only thing we need to do is to ask God, grant us the grace to realize who our neighbor is, who we should help. The Lord has given us so much talent, so much charisms. Some of us may be financially capable. Some of us may have the capability to listen. And so the neighbor could be a friend who needs a listening ear, could be a person who is left out during a party, or it could even be the person knocking at your window, seeking for you to buy a few rags. This is your neighbor. Nothing can define them except asking God, what is your will? I have this practice of praying each day, asking, Lord, teach me and show me who I should treat as neighbor. Show me who is my neighbor, so I may never get into the situation where the Levite and priests have been, where they failed to see that loving your neighbor was the best way of loving God. God bless you all.